Good afternoon, everybody. This is Bob Luz with Massachusetts Restaurant Association. I'm going to just let the screen catch up for about a minute as people start to load in, and then we'll get going out of respect for everybody's time this afternoon. So give us just 1 minute and we'll be off and running. All right, as we allow people to continue to filter in, I do want to welcome everybody to what is our right now scheduled last series of reopening webinars. They've been well attended and certainly well circulated past this, as everything is recorded. Today focuses on the supply chain, and we've got clearly three experts in this spectrum. Manny Costa, President and CEO of the Costa Fruit and Produce Company. Doug Epstein, Managing Principal, Director of Regional Sales with Horizon Beverage. And Rich Querci from Area President from US Foods. And Rich, I always struggle with your name, and I apologize up front with that.
That's all right,
Bob. First of all, I appreciate all your time, because I know this is an incredibly busy time for all three of you as well, and want to be respectful of that. So thank you for all you've been doing for us during this pandemic. I will say every one of these folks on this panel have really gone out of their way to try and help our members survive this in many different ways. And that's been not been lost on myself, nor the broader, certainly the board of directors and the broader membership community. So you're all great corporate citizens, and it's most appreciated. And we know how much of a struggle this has been for you. We are all truly in this together. So thank you for all of that. So as I jump out and start to open this up, we know this isn't all about us, meaning the restaurant operators. And I want to start there. I mean, you have all had to deal with furloughed workers. This has impacted your business. So I guess quickly, how are you getting through this phase and now ramping up as you have to get prepared for the onslaught of business that's about to hopefully come? Start with Manny.
Okay. Well, like all of us, our business virtually disappeared practically overnight. And so I would say we went from 100% to maybe just over 20% back in March. And so we all had to kind of revamp our whole operations. We stayed open. I mean, I don't know if it's our distributor DNA, or just because some of our customers still remained open, hospitals, some schools, some colleges. So we had to kind of vastly reshape our operations. And so there was obviously, massive layoffs. We had, product losses that we all endured. But then we also had to take a look at our operations and say, how do we accommodate this period of time without going bankrupt in the process? So that meant, cutting some delivery days out of the week, some things that we should all take a look at going down the road a little bit, cutoff times. Things are running the company as efficiently as we could during that period when we, climbed from 20 to 25 to 28 to 30, and we're well north of that now. But so it was a re-examination of what we do and how we do it.
Rich, how about yourself up there?
So very similar to Manny, our business was impacted immediately in the tune of 50 to 60%. And here in Seabrook, we had about $30 million worth of inventory, a little bit more actually. So, first and foremost, you start to worry about inventory, and then you worry about the accounts receivable, and how much receivables are out on the street because the industry is closed. But, I should back up. I mean, the first and most important thing was the safety of our employees. We have never veered off on the safety of our employees. We furloughed quite a few employees. And we ended up having to lay off a few employees. So, as we were talking, as far as the company is concerned, you try to preserve cash and make sure you're able to do everything that you need to do to run a business. So, now as we're rethinking about reopening, and it's just a different game than it was 12, 13 weeks ago. So bringing our inventory levels back up, we still have asked our reps not to go out on the street because we just feel it's better and more safe if they don't. But same as Manny, we reduced inventory, we reduced delivery days, we reduced SKUs. And now it's just a matter of how we're going to look once we get through this. In our industry, in our side is, the perishable items. Scary how much, we donated a tremendous amount of product. And then there's items that you don't even get to donate. They go bad, and you just end up throwing them in the barrel faster than you can give them away. Yeah. So it's a real different way to think when you're talking about running the business.
Yeah. Dougie, how about on the wholesaler side there in the liquor industry and beer industry?
A slightly different position. Early on, we were lobbying hard to be declared essential services. On the retail side, still a majority of our business from a revenue perspective, but the mellow shifts. And obviously it's not quite as profitable. It's a different type of product, different type of quantity. So clearly there was a financial impact. We have the same thing, a receivable sitting out there with all of our restaurant partners. And that was very significant. Our inventory, however, is not so perishable. A little bit on the beer side, on the wine and spirit side, it can stand for quite a bit of time. But the huge costs associated with prepping a company from a safety perspective, much less efficient from a delivery perspective in the interest of safety, and keeping our staff on board. We knew this was going to be a temporary measure. Between our 5 states of coverage, we spent over $800,000 keeping our staff fully employed, fully compensated during the past 13 weeks of the pandemic. Kind of an unheralded support of our people and our associates. But that means we're ready to go. We're ready to hit the ground running. We've been working hard towards this day of phase 2, I guess yesterday, and then hopefully opening in restaurants or in dining soon enough. I feel like we're very similar to a lot of our on-premise customers. We've just had to adjust our procedures, our policies, and how we go to market and the channels they're in. I know, Bob, you and I have spoke a lot about how so many of your membership has transitioned to takeout, or in this case now outdoor dining, and you've had to revamp how you approach your business. We're in a very similar position. And I think that a lot of learnings will stay with us for a very long time in some of those practices, maybe to the positive. And that's where we're at today.
Yeah, well, that's good. So it seems like, in taking bits and pieces here, Rich talked about, taking care of the employees now within the 4 walls that are there. So I assume you're doing all the same type of things that our industry's starting to do or has been doing and will be doing more effectively as we go forward through these openings. But you're doing health checks with your employees, temperature checks, tracing, all that good stuff. And then you each talked about, or some of you talked about the changing relationship between, is it face-to-face or is it on Zoom? I mean, the whole world's transitioned to Zoom. So it sounds like we're not putting people back out onto the street to knock on the doors of these businesses, at least initially. Is that a fair statement, or did I read that wrong?
So from our perspective, it's really about the safety of the employee. Now, we certainly have some reps that are going out on the street, but we're asking them not to, right? Because it's more safe for our employee. If you asked me 12 weeks ago if we could do business this way, I would have said probably not. And everyone adapts very well. Right to cold calling. We have virtual cold calling going on. So the team's done a great job adjusting to virtual meetings, Zoom meetings, team meetings, whatever it is. And it's working. I'm not saying it will never go back. I still think the industry needs that face-to-face interaction. And I think our customers want it, as well as our reps want it. you know, I can always speak from inside our office. The social aspect of working is gone. And that's what a lot of people, you know, miss coming into work and seeing the fun and the interaction within people. And I look forward to that day of getting everybody back here. I'm in this big office by myself, but you know, it's just a little different.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, we have had different phases of service. And once again, we've had retail operating the entire time. Our delivery aspects really never change except for a variety of safety protocols we implemented, going to more single-man truck routes rather than two-man truck routes to keep them spaced out, how we actually make the physical delivery. We follow the governor's guidelines in terms of salespeople and our merchandise in the accounts. About 3 weeks ago, we started going back in, and we plan to do the same with restaurants as they open up. I think the difference is that very quickly we acclimated to technology. We have a very broad, full IT department, a lot of resources at hand, and that's developed some amazing best practices that I think will continue in perpetuity. We're scheduling appointments with our customers now on Zoom and making those kind of sales calls. It's more efficient for everybody rather than waiting by the back door, waiting by the office at the retail location or for on-premise. So I think that collectively we're all going to be more efficient, time sensitive, and you can actually transfer information sometimes better with technology, PowerPoint presentations, product attributes, certainly ahead of time. I think that Rich is right. You do miss some of the collegiality of group settings. I think it's gonna be a long time before we have large group meetings, and we used to have hundreds of people in a meeting room every Friday. But in other ways, it can make us more efficient. So traditionally, we've had Friday morning sales meetings for all of our sales teams across all states. Now we've foregone that, and we're at retail, working the stores, building displays, supporting our customer base, and we have Zoom calls midday. We never did that before, and it's become much more efficient use of our time. We think providing better service for our customer base, I think it's going to translate to the on-premise community as well.
All three of you operate outside of Massachusetts, and as we know, sadly, Massachusetts is behind everybody else in terms of the reopening process. So as we, you know, what experience from the surrounding states can you share with everybody here about what you've already learned as they've entered this? And, you know, as each of you have sort of brought up, and I'll ask each of you to talk about it, what's that delivery, you know, we talked about the sales part of it, but what's the delivery side going to look like and be different as we go forward? So, Manny, why don't we start with you?
Well, in terms of what my folks are hearing or seeing in terms of out of state, and that's really mostly New Hampshire, it varies from 50 to 75% of normal volume. Of course, that's weather dependent, could change radically one day to the next. But no, that's what we're hearing, about 50 to 75%.
Yeah, I'd agree with Manny. I was actually surprised by the numbers.
Yeah.
Not just in New Hampshire and Rhode Island, but I see nationally from various Nielsen registers, they're up to 60% of business in places like Florida and Texas, and certainly that is weather dependent. But it gives me a lot of hope that we can manage through this changing of processes. I think that consumers, there's a huge pent up demand to be out and about. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to create a culinary beverage experience for the consumers so they come back. They don't just make that one initial foray out and they say, oh, that was an awful experience. We got to make it a great experience so they come back again and again, a safe experience, an entertaining experience. And I'm very optimistic, much more so than I was 2, 3, 4 weeks ago.
Rich?
So I think, you know, there are so many different variations, but when you get right down to it, you either play in the takeout world or you don't. And I think a lot of people at first said, you know what, I'm going to hold off, and there's not much business there, and they were surprised. I think, you know, and I can speak for myself, a lot of people you talk to want to support the local restaurants, and I think they actually did very well with it. They did very well in the takeout. You know, then they opened up to the outdoor dining, and you know, I think people realize they can do it well, they can follow the guidelines, and quite honestly, they don't really need to spend a tremendous amount of money. You know, there are some people that want to come, you know, put dividers up and spend money that they may not necessarily need to. I've seen restaurants simply with a trash bag over, you know, one bar stool and the next one open, and just so you know where you could sit, where you can't sit. I saw one, I was in Tennessee, and I was actually talking to a manager of a large restaurant in Tennessee, and they just put yellow tape on the table they couldn't use and the seats they couldn't use. And he said, you know what, we didn't spend any other money. He said, we got 50% occupancy, we get indoor dining, we get outdoor dining, went to a limited menu. And he said, you know what, we were really, really discouraged coming into this. And, but you know what, it works. And we didn't have to spend a tremendous amount of money. The people are supporting us. And I found the same with New Hampshire and Maine. You know, hopefully things are going to fall as nicely and move as quickly to indoor dining in Massachusetts. But, you know, I think that I love the fact that people are willing to spend money in the local restaurants and support the local community, right? That to me means a lot. And I think you can do a lot more than you may have thought you could have just, 12 weeks ago.
Did you see a lot of restaurants in the other states? Did they open when they were eligible to open for outside? I mean, it's great that, hey, you can open outside, but I would assume the numbers are probably similar in other states. Like here in Massachusetts, 80% of the restaurants across the state today don't have the capability to put seats outside. So did you see operators open or not open initially or through the whole phase of outdoor? And did they just wait for indoor, or did they try and jump in somehow, some fashion?
Oh, I think it's very similar to, kind of building the airplane while you're flying it. I think, I agree with Rich. You'd be surprised how good you can be. And I know there's some thought to waiting until you get to 50% capacity at some money-making, profitable level. I don't think there's a question of profitability. Even in my business, we've done a lot of things that are completely unprofitable, but it's the right thing to do for the long term. And I think we're learning so much as we go. Every week, there are new wow moments that I never thought of that before or how it works. But until you get into it, until you start flying that plane, you're not going to see it as an operator. So I would encourage everybody to jump into the takeout game, to jump into the outdoor dining where they can, because you're going to have so many learnings. You're going to be a better operator when it does get to 50% capacity. Because if you try jumping in just at that point, you're not going to really be educated enough to have that plane flying. So I think it's time, as in other states, you've seen it, they're jumping in, they're not making money, but they're getting tremendous expertise. It's working out pretty well.
Rich, Manny, anything on that?
So I think, at the very beginning, a lot of operators decided to hold out because they thought this was a 2 or 3 week waiting period.
Mhm.
And they said, you know what, I'm just going to wait. And when everything comes back to normal, I'm going to open up and I'm going to be fine. Well, I don't think they realized there's a new normal. And now that they realize it, they're like, you know what, I could get back to bringing in some income, right? So, and I think, they probably listened to, whether it was peers or distributors. And, one of the things I think a lot of us have done very well is, you put on webinars and seminars to help the operators. And I think they get some momentum. We have spent a tremendous amount of time. We have consultants on staff, and we didn't furlough our consultants. So we had our consultants calling restaurants and say, hey, do you know how to get into the takeout game? Would you like to, would you like some help with that, right? Whatever they needed. And I think the more of that gained momentum, the more people realize, you know what, I got to get going. I got to get back into it. And I think they're surprised. So, but we originally had probably 50% of our restaurants did not open for takeout when they could have. And more have been opening up. And we still have some that haven't opened yet.
Very good. I know, despite my pleadings with the governor and lieutenant governor and Secretary Keneally about giving us some advance notice, and this will be really a little bit more on the perishable, but it'll affect all. But I said we need time to be able to plan for this, and it is, but it wasn't necessarily just for restaurants to be able to pull and prep and dice and cut and get their employees back and all that. It was for the supply chain. It was for the fact that, as we said at the beginning, millions were lost. And no one was going to reorder until they knew for a fact this is the date. Okay, fast forward. On Saturday, we found out we can open on Monday. So how is the supply chain today in terms of being able to catch up? How's that all going? And will we be able to accommodate places here that are going to continue to open up this week? And obviously, knock on wood, 2 weeks from this past Monday, hopefully we're opening inside.
I think, Bob, Manny here. First of all, it's not coming like a tsunami, okay? Given the restrictions, given the fact that it's outdoor dining, it's coming in as kind of a gentle wave of business. I wish it was a tsunami. I think the perishable distributors have the greatest challenge, of course. Because, having a local market here, I mean, our preference obviously to purchase right from the source, and we're buying office in California. But short of that, it's 2 miles away. So we can ease ourselves back. And I think dairy distributors have it more challenging because when they're ordering, considerable quantities of cheese and so forth, it can be a 7 or 10 day, lead time. So, that's where we are. It's, there's nothing in the produce world that's of tremendous concern right now other than the things that normally go wrong in the produce world or the shortages of weather conditions. But it's, we're not experiencing any shortages or the Russia business. I mean, that's great. It'll probably pick up another 10 or 20%, but that's, we can accommodate that fairly easily. I think most distributors can.
Rich, how about you?
Yeah, so we're in a very similar situation. Fortunately, where you have New Hampshire and Maine open up, you have a gradual buildup. Quite honestly, we started building our inventory once New Hampshire and Maine opened up. As more and more customers got into it, we have a pretty aggressive inventory control system, so we can look at people's orders, former orders or order guides, and order items of high volume and get a good understanding of the pizza segment has been strong, right? They actually flourished in this, from what we could see, but most of our product doesn't come from, within 25, 30 miles from here. Most of it comes from across the country. So, it's a matter of getting trucks in and when we run on so the last 3 weeks, we've been running on about a 50 to 60% fill rate from the distributor, for the manufacturers, then that affects us on the distribution side. But similar to Manny, we're going to be fine. A couple of things that we've done is we've put some restrictions on items where we don't want a redistributor coming in and taking 50 cases of something that person may have bought 2 cases for, in fairness of the guys that are opening up. We have a list of items that we must carry. So a lot of PPE stuff. And we're not allowing customers to take 10 or 15 cases. We're putting a maximum purchase, 5 cases on gloves. So everyone has it, so everyone can get it to open up, right? So we're doing things like that we typically wouldn't do. But we're also, limiting some of, we had 15,000 items in stock, and we won't have 15,000 items in stock anymore, right? We'll probably go down to 12,000. And, customers are going to have to take a look at, hey, I used to buy this, but, let me look at something that's similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
We might not have to have 180 different types of French fries in the building any longer.
Yeah. I think, when I was disappointed that we opened outside only to start, I thought we were ready and prepared. Oops. Oh, geez. That's a big one not
I've
to take, guys. That's a big one not to take.
Oh,
Secretary Heffernan. All right. Sorry. So anyways, the point I was trying to make was, I think the outside, we were prepared to go inside, but what I did in my mind think about was the outside gave us an opportunity to spread out supply chain a little bit and soften that immediacy blow. And I think that's something that Manny said, and maybe even Rich said as well. So I do think that helps sort of level it off a little bit. So if I'm going to look for upside, that's one. Doug, what about you? Is there any problems in terms of the supply chain? And
well, I think you hit the nail on the head there. You know, and I said earlier, all of our operations are adjusting. The channel, the mix, the meld, these are terms in my industry, are different, both for my business and for our customers' business. So what before was almost 100% in-store dining is now probably 40% takeout, and who knows what the percentage will be in terms of outside dining, and that's going to change your product offering. So what you maybe sold a lot of before, you'll sell something differently, at least in the short term going forward. So that affects the supply chain a little bit. In my business, we're relatively non-perishable. I'm sitting on a lot of liters of spirits. My overall inventory is up about 12%, which is a lot. Almost 100% due to spirits of liters sitting there. And wine is not really perishable. Local craft beer, yes, but the imports have 6 to 9 months shelf life. So it's not really an issue. We have no supply chain issues per se, but I think that you're going to see, particularly if the spirits takeout law goes through, I think it's going to be a big part of our operators' business going forward. That's what we see nationally. We see nationally restaurants selling a couple of 50 mLs, we refer to them as nips, of say a tequila, Casamigos tequila, and a bottle of margarita mix at a Mexican restaurant, and they package it up. Well, that was a product size that you never carried before, both the margarita mix probably in a 16-ounce bottle and 250 ml nips. I don't think we'll have any shortage of those, but you start talking 100 mLs, 200 mLs, half bottles of wine, cans of wine. These are some exciting propositions for takeout and outdoor service where you can play with the pricing a little bit, maybe make it a little more profitable than a traditional 750 milliliter bottle of wine. You've got to think outside the box here a little bit. We're not still selling the same baked potato, maybe a different type of baked potato, and maybe a twice baked baked potato, and maybe you can get upcharged for it. So I think there's some opportunity that you talk about silver lining, and that's where there could be some constrictions because obviously we sell a lot of that product at retail. We just don't know what the demand is going to be and how the consumers or our restaurants will offer these kind of different sizes and shapes. But there's really no supply issue whatsoever. I will tell you too, though, that you got to look at national brands. And there's been a generic trend away from national brands. But I think from a beverage ergonomic standpoint, you don't have time to sell consumers up. You may not have the staff and the labor to do it. You need brands that consumers recognize, that they can instantly, order and understand and pull down and move on to simplify the labor process of preparing drinks of any sort. So I think what the restaurants are going to offer is going to change, and that may impact supply chain.
So let me ask each one of you, what are the procedural changes that you would recommend to operators to be best prepared for ordering product and effectively receiving deliveries from your organizations as we go forward? What changes would you recommend to operators out there to help facilitate sort of the new world order, if we would, to make this process work as best for the restaurant or food and beverage operation, I should say, as well as our business partner on the other end? So.
Well, I'll chime in, I guess. Well, first of all, as you're reopening, I would strongly encourage any restaurant operator to have that initial conversation with your distributor or your main vendors. Things may have changed since 2 months ago in terms of delivery days, cutoff times, and so forth. So that initial conversation, and honestly, at some point in that conversation, maybe it's a particular subject, but if there's an outstanding balance from a couple of months ago and no one's brought it up since then, or nobody's been able to reach, be proactive about that and talk to your sales rep or call the company directly and address it right then and there up front. I think that's the best way. I can't speak to every situation. They're all different. But having that initial, I mean, I always say the distributor and the vendors are the first line of credit for anybody in the food service industry. And it's important to regard that, and it's to understand our situation as well, in that our supply base is less forgiving. Our supply base is that if you don't pay, it's not let's chat about it and work out something. It's pretty much you pay or you don't receive product. So a lot of distributors are pretty stretched. And still, even with that, I mean, I can speak for ourselves, but as far as what I can see, there's a fairly forgiving, let's work it out, we're all in this together type of mentality. But it's just important. What you don't want to do is not have that conversation, place the first order, and a distributor or vendor will, not because they think you're about to go out of business, but simply because they've got to flag a situation where there's an existing balance, somebody hasn't ordered in quite a few weeks, and all of a sudden there's an order. If nothing, then just to bring up the conversation. So I would very strongly suggest that a restaurant operator is proactive in that sense and reaching out and have that conversation, discuss terms going forward, discuss the old balance and ways of bringing everything together. And I haven't seen one instance where that's been a failed policy. The other thing, I just think there has to be that conversation between, again, vendor, distributor, service provider, and the customer, because we all have to become more efficient going forward. Clearly, we're a reflection in our urge to satisfy our customers as they want to be serviced and so forth. But it's just going to be a different world. And things that we've done in the past that are excessive, whether it be deliveries or an overabundance of SKUs, or in the restaurant side, too many menu options, everything's got to be taken a look at. And we're all going to have, I mean, it's not going to be the same world. We know that for quite a while, even with capacity restrictions, the economy, the national maybe hesitancy on some parts of the people to go out. I mean, a recent survey still has about 50% that are people are fairly hesitant. So we're all hoping for the best, but it's going to be a process. In the meantime, we all just have to become as efficient as we can and work together to cut out waste, to cut out excessive costs in the whole relationship. And then the operator should seek better pricing because of that. It's not just to save money for the distributor. It's to have a more efficient system. I think this is going to expose a lot of things in our industry that are excessive that need to be addressed and that can be improved upon.
Well, good. Manny, I applaud you for bringing that tough subject up.
It's a good subject, I know.
We didn't prearrange that, but it's an important conversation to have and not a comfortable one to bring up. So I applaud you for having that and appreciate it. And I think that's a fair message to share with everybody. So thank you. Rich, what about you?
So I'd bucket it up into a few things. One, I would say follow CDC guidelines. Like, I wouldn't recommend thinking that you're not going to get caught. You're going to be able to do whatever you want to do. I would follow CDC guidelines. They're there for a reason. Two, I would say when you're getting ready, look at your operation. See what changes you could possibly make, like that would benefit you, whether it's your menu, whether you want to change the direction, but your menu is a big thing. I think this industry has come a long way in technology. There's a lot of technology to help people, on whether it's online ordering, whether it's point of sale system, right? There's so much good technology out there. Reservation system that somebody may not be using. So I would get into the technology game. And this industry, so it's the only industry I've ever been in. And I think there's some really smart people in this industry, but sometimes people are afraid to ask questions. Sometimes people are afraid to go to their distributor or go to somebody else and say, hey, what else is there out there to help me with my operations? you know, most of the distributors, most of the partners have ways to help customers, not in what they purchase in food, but, you know, third-party services, right? So take a look at some of those, right? Some of the restaurants that just do things the same old way, you know, Manny's right. It's going to be a different world, whether you want to believe it or not. You know, it may come back at some point, and, you know, it's whether you're going to be there, I think. You know, you know, it's a great industry, and I think there's a lot to learn. You can learn from a lot of different types of people. So I think those are probably the 4 buckets that I would say to really look at, right? And then I'm gonna give Manny a plug on the AR piece, because, you know, there's 2 types of people. There are people that want to address it, and there are people that don't. It doesn't go away magically. You might as well have a conversation about it. We know the situation everyone's in, and you work with one another, right? And you just got to deal with it. So,
yeah. Well, thank you very much. And before I spin it off to Dougie here, I will say, you know, Rich is obviously part of a bigger organization. I got to say, I was 7:03 or 7:10 in the morning. I happened to be watching the Today Show with my wife about a week ago, and saw a national U.S. Foods commercial come on that was very specific and just addressed the relationship between the company and the restaurant, food and beverage operations, that what they've gone through, what they will do to get to the other side together. And it was obviously a big spend and a very specific target for that message, because it wasn't the average consumer. It was the restaurateurs across the country. And I applauded him at 7:10 in the morning, and he responded right back to me. So I appreciated that.
Thanks, Bob. And, you know, I wasn't, you know, this wasn't about plugging U.S. Foods.
No.
But, you know, it's reopening kits, right? We're giving away free reopening kits, and I'm sure most of the distributors have some sort of reopening kit available to you. And, you know, those are the questions that you should ask. Like, hey, if you don't understand the restrictions, pick up the phone. The chances are your distributor knows, or one of your other partners knows, maybe knows a little bit more about the restrictions than you do. I was listening to the radio, and I heard on one radio message, it was 1,800 pages, right? One of the documents was 1,800 pages. I don't know. It's a lot.
Crazy. Yeah. Dougie.
The start out as a delivery question, and it went the gamut.
Yeah,
I'll jump on the credit grenade too. You know, it was close to 2 months ago, Bob, you and I spoke. Yep. And I don't think your membership knows it, how you've been such a leader with myself. You and I basically together were the architects, and we have certain credit laws with alcohol beverages. You and I were specifically the architects behind the proposal put before the ABCC. And if not for your leadership, and I guess my questions, I think it could have gone a different way. We really had to rally the remaining wholesalers of the alcohol beverage industry together, to coalesce under your and my idea of kind of extended out payments, monthly, like a rent payment, and how we can work over time to work with our customers on a consistent basis, not one by one, but across the broad spread. So I really applaud you for your leadership. If it wasn't for you and me, I don't think it would have happened. So I think you really adequately addressed that. And I want your membership to know what kind of role that you specifically played in that, as did I.
As did you. I was just going to say, I appreciate that, and you know that. So
I think that's an amazing example of us working together, you know, as associations, as different industries, that a lot of people just won't see. But getting to the logistics of the delivery, you know, I think there's certain protocols, as Rich said, there is a new normal. It's not as usual. I think one aspect, curbside accessibility. You know, look at our drivers, our delivery people are people too, and they have concerns and fears. They don't want to go down in small basements and whatnot like they used to in you know, prior days, or even for returns or something of that nature. There has to be an ease of delivering that product and picking it up physically that we have to consider, and we certainly recognize there are physical constraints, particularly in downtown Boston and other congested areas. So we have to think about that. I think tomorrow that our on-premise customers really need to look at streamlining vendors. And that may be a little bit self-serving, I get it. But at the end of the day, fewer bills, fewer invoices, fewer touch points To that point, Manny talked about streamlining your menu. Fewer items, you can buy more of those items instead of, we do a lot of bottle sales. Start thinking about case sales, less touch points, less handling, quicker deliveries, quicker check-in for your own people. And it's all under the guise really of safety and efficiency. So I think that in some ways will reduce the options for consumers, but it'll be in a safer, more efficacious manner. And that's what we need to look at. Rich product technology. One concept that we're strongly promoting is the use of QRC codes. We do a lot of printing of menus for our customer base. We're printing posters with a QRC code that links directly into your website, right to your menu, your drink list, whatever you want. And what's nice is you can always change on your own that drink list and menu. It's not a printed version. It's online, so it's infinitely flexible. And I think consumers today, everybody has a smartphone. They walk up to the poster or wherever you want to, put them in your restaurant or outside in the window, click, nobody has to touch a menu. Safety, and it's actually more efficient. I don't see why we have menus today. There's really no good reason for it if you can get it all on your smartphone. And I think that the last thing is, and Rich brought it up, is you got to speak with your salesperson. We've been educating our salespeople over the last 2.5, 3 months. What are the strategies to support your customer base as we begin to open up? We have a myriad of philosophies, from RTDs to premix this, beverage ergonomics. Do you want your wait staff cutting up limes anymore? Probably not. Well, what are you going to do? We have different lime juice options. Those kind of scenarios, packaging up margaritas to go, just all sorts of thematic ideas. We're doing online tastings, in-home retailtainment, we call it, where you can buy a takeout package from the restaurant. You get a code to Zoom, and one of our specialists hosts an online tasting as if they're in your restaurant, but they're not. And the restaurant gets a lot of publicity, gets a lot of entertainment value with the consumers. So this is what our salespeople can offer. You need to speak to them. This is all they've been doing for the last 2.5 months, getting ready to provide you with ideas and value.
Great. All right, last question is a 60-second speed question as we go across here, because I got to jump to a Zoom on channel 10 to talk about restaurant opening procedures here, so I apologize. Last word, I'll start from Manny, Rich, and then Doug. Anything we haven't talked about from supply chain, global supply chain issues that could cause friction, or anything that you see that we haven't talked about from your perspective, Manny? 60 seconds on smooth reopening.
Well, I didn't mean to gloss over myself. I just want to pick up on what Rich mentioned about the whole CDC aspect of things. Just think of the devastating effect if you have an infection in your operation on your staff and quarantining, but then on top of it, the contact tracing and customers that have been there. So I put that as number one in reopening. First of all, in terms of the people that are delivering to your operation, they should have a statement of their practices and their protocols, and that should be thoroughly reviewed. Because if they're bringing it into your operation, well, that's not helping. Secondly, just again, in terms of operating on oneself, restaurant industry is like the strongest, the weakest link, because if there's some infections as a result of people dining out, it's going to affect everybody in a very negative way. So there should be more and more of a focus on that, and constant reminding everybody that this is really important. If you want to bring consumers back or guests back, well, they have to feel that they're in a safe environment. And I think Steve Delafoe said it, Wes, you already do everything right. It's just doing that little extra to make sure that something doesn't creep into your operation that's going to ultimately be devastating to you and even to your brothers and sisters in the business. So that would be my parting thought. It's just the whole food safety aspect of it, or public safety aspect of it.
Well said, Rich.
Yeah, I would be, don't be fooled, right? So customers are going to be much more aware of what they're walking into going forward. Make sure you're prepared. Like you have to have a clean restaurant. You have to have a good plan. You have to have good business sense. Otherwise, your patrons are going to come in and they're not going to come back. They're going to go to the next guy. And I always say, be nice, right? We're all in this. We all have changed our ways. We all have added cost. We all have a different way of doing things, right? From a distributor side, we're not the enemy. We're in this together. You know, from the drivers to the rep to everyone. You know, everyone works hard. It's a great industry. We'll get it back. You got to be patient and try to have some fun. Right? It's the best industry in the world, man.
There you go.
Yeah,
Good.
The one topic we haven't really talked about yet is your own people, is your staff and your teams, and how you bring them back on board. Overnight, you're not going to ramp up to 100%, and that's why I'm encouraging everybody to start jumping in with takeout, with outdoor dining, before I guess the real game begins, hopefully in 2 or 3 weeks. You're going to need to get your staff acclimated. 2 weeks. Thank you, Bob. You need to get your staff acclimated to the new protocols. You know, it's not just interacting with your consumers, it's getting your people on board as well. You're only as strong as your weakest link. You need to get them to buy into the new way of doing business. You need to get them to understand the safety protocols and also the new ways of servicing your consumers, which are different tomorrow than they were yesterday. I think you need to have a multi-week plan based on a budget of revenue, and that correlates to your staffing. Overnight, you can't bring everybody back, but how will you, as your revenues increase, bring people back slowly? In the meantime, the early onboard staff need to do more. Maybe they need to do different things they didn't do before until you can get up to an appropriate staffing level. I think that's something you have to consider. I think to Rich's point, a well thought out plan, it can't be shooting from the hip. And the best part about a plan is you're going to find things you never thought of, and you're going to have to adjust every single day. But until you begin to enact that plan, you'll never know how to adjust. So I encourage you to get out there, get the experience, make it happen. You're going to be successful. Consumers are there, and all of us wholesalers are here to support you.
Great. Listen, I want to thank all three of you. I mean, this industry is at its core, it's a relationship-based industry. We all talked about that at the beginning. And the relationship between our business partners and the operators has always been a strong one. We do work together, and the three of you are great representatives for the entire supply chain of partners that we have out there. But you've taken the time to speak with us and share some learnings and preparations. Really appreciate it. And I think you've all pointed out the same thing, that the relationship is going to change somewhat, but it's not. And you've all reinforced what I say all the time, which is #TogetherWeWin. And there's no question about it. We all got to do our things to make sure as many of us make it to the other side as possible. And I appreciate you talking about the subject matter you did today. I appreciate you being partners for all the operators out there. And, let's keep going at it. And, bang away at some outside dining now. Get ready for inside dining. Realize that takeout's going to be here for the long run. Realize that hopefully we're going to have cocktails to go along with beer and wine before long. Again, let's get everybody we can to the other side. So thanks, everybody. And we'll sign off now. Appreciate it, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Go on. Thank you.
Bye now.